one of the things that interests me about people that are experienced with psychedelics is it's an sort of an almost a postmodern and somewhat sophisticated way of talking about God without, the sort of automatic recourse to atheism that sort of seems to be the dominant mentality in like what we might call like the chattering classes or in intellectual circles, that is considered sort of dumb to believe in God.
I love you. The chattering classes, the automatic recourse to atheism. I'm taking that forever. The automatic. I'm sorry to cut you off. Please continue. Beautiful terms. I just wanted to underline them. Fantastic, and thank you.
Oh, I don't mind being interrupted to be complimented. That's like, normally an interruption, that's a real assault to my little ego. But to underline something I've said, well, that's feeding the ego further. Yeah, that. I felt for a long while that space has been ceded to materialism and rationalism precisely because of the huge measurable advances in, say, medicine and technology, but at the expense of areas where we have stagnated as a species: spiritual evolution, compassionate evolution. And I wonder if... Do you believe that, say, plant medicine, psychedelics, can be sort of an aspect of the revivification of sacred principles that I believe are a requirement if we're ever to burst out of the bubble of materialistic rationalism that's enclosed us for not just in the modern era of the last, post-Clinton, where there's no left anymore, but from the Enlightenment onwards?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think that any method, whatever it may be, that gives you even the most temporary remission of your identity is going to produce a lifetime of transformation for you. It's a very, Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishnas, described being human as an embarrassing situation. And and it is. It's quite embarrassing, and you there's so much that goes along with it. Like your ego gets bruised, but not just that. You have to have bowel movements. You have to piss. You have to keep drinking water, and there's this weird feeling of like, well, we have to eat, so we're always being driven by this need for food, and then all the other stuff that goes along with being human. It's really embarrassing, and if you think this is all there is, then you are going to start having a really bad trip. It's no different from when you are getting that feeling that you're never going to come down. And so in this sense, except there is some ominous thing called death, it's some random time that's going to happen where you just suddenly stop being high on the human condition altogether. And that's equally terrifying because we have this amnesia and it's all we've known. And so, I think that earlier times, there were periods in humanity. Terence McKenna, there's a great book, I believe it's called The Archaic Revival, where he talks about the, ancient cultures that were, he creates a differentiation between what he calls dominator culture and I think partnership cultures, where, and dominator cultures tends to be patriarchal, partnership cultures tend to be matriarchal. And so if you look back at mushroom cults, they often have along with them what appears to be a reverence for the goddess. You see that the pregnant woman figurine, the worship of the pregnant the feminine form. And so his premise is that psychedelics instantly connect you to that. Specifically what he calls exopheromones, psilocybin, ayahuasca. These are literally because plants communicate with each other using some kind of chemical release, which are known as exopheromones. And so his premise is that cannabis, psilocybin, and ayahuasca, any naturally occurring psychedelics, are actually communication nodes that the earth is sort of perspiring into the human consciousness to communicate a message regarding our place in the universe and to hopefully compel us to become less destructive. And so that's a beautiful way of looking at it, is that these psychedelics are sort of letters from planet Earth to the human psyche regarding what we actually are. And in between that realization of what we actually are, we have this periods in history that are telling us something completely different. You're just a bundle of atoms. You're just a brain. You're just matter. You know, do you know Bob Thurman?
Oh, yeah, like Uma Thurman's dad, Buddhist guy.
Yes, he was at this Ram Dass retreat, and I'm pretty sure he thought I was you for a couple of days. He was calling me Russell, and I was flattered. But he's brilliant. He's this wonderful Buddhist scholar, and he talks about how for humans,
did we get on? Did I get on with Bob Thurman when I was you? When you was me for a retreat? Did you build me a good relationship? Or when I see him, is he going to go, get out of my sight?
I thought you meant, do we make love?
No, not a Bass retreat. I don't assume that you're going to make love to Uma Thurman's dad.
Well, you should come to a Ram Dass retreat. What he was saying is to successfully pull off guilt-free eco-destruction, you need to establish a purely materialistic form of everything. Because if you do that, you can dump oil in the ocean, because who gives a it's just a bunch of atoms, right? Who cares? This thing is just not even a mistake. It's not, because a mistake would require a sentient force to create it. It's just some temporary coalescing of atomic particles that have complexified into what we are right now, and basically just figure out a way to get as much food in your stomach and to fuck as much as you can, build some nice shells, and then die and go into nothingness forever. This is the mind state we need for exploitation to work guilt-free.
Brilliant.
And so that's, well, man, he's brilliant. I love him. And, I think that these psychedelics, they instantly eradicate the ability to have that mind state, because what are you going to do when you connect to the, Godhead or whatever you want to call it? It's very hard after that to be as exploitive as you were before.
Duncan, when you explain that, it helps me to remember that what we have done is acculturated our appetites, the appetites that are just there to ensure the survival of the vehicle that we're in, like eat food or the vehicle will shut down, have sex or that'll be the end of the line. We have, in a sense, deified through culture those impulses. We've sort of sanctified them. In one way, the question is not whether or not there is a divine, it's where we apply our divine impulse to, what we apply our divine attention to. And currently, and as you've very articulately just described, where that deification lands is on, we need food, we need to consume. It falls onto materialism. We're treating it like it is a god. We have nominated and do revere false idols. That sort of Christian idea from C.S. Lewis. He talks about, like, he's in his book Mere Christianity, he makes a sort of a case for Christianity, having previously been an atheist, in which he sort of offers as the main tenet of this argument, like, even though you might say, like, that, there's one culture where a person can marry 5 people and another culture where a person might marry 1 person. There is, varieties and ethics and moralities in which there is variation. He goes, there are no cultures where a person will be applauded for running away in battle. There's no culture where it's cool to let all your friends down. Saying that what is this thing? And I've had this conversation with atheists many times. It's like, I'm not saying you need a god in order to be good. You need a dominant ideal that you're aspiring to attain in order to be good. I'm saying, what the fuck is good? How come when you sort of see an image of, like, oil being done, you sort of something, you go, that's not right. Like, who is that in there? What is that?
What a great question. I think that is a question that's worth many incarnations exploring that question, and looking into the, not just what is good, but whenever we see a thing that we think is good, the almost robot-like reaction to it, where you try to grab it. It's there's these great videos on YouTube of people sort of tormenting raccoons. They give them sugar cubes, and raccoons wash their food, and so you give a raccoon a sugar cube, and it'll try to wash it, and then it disappears in the water, and the raccoon is like, what the fuck? The food has just vanished. It was just here, now it's gone. And I can't think of a better symbol for the situation of a human being encountering that good that you're talking about. you try to grab it, you put a fence around it, protect it, whatever it is that you try to do to hold on to it. And then before you know it, it's just gone. And that's an incredibly frustrating experience that must be a result of, I guess you could call it ignorance, which is a really sweet and sad thing humans do, which, God, I don't know why I'm like going all Hare Krishna on you right now, Russell. I want you to shave your head, Russell. But one of the descriptions given regarding what you're talking about is, imagine if you were addicted to heroin, but got hit. Okay, but imagine if you got hit in the head and woke up in the hospital with amnesia. But you were completely addicted to heroin, but you didn't know what could fulfill this need that you had. And so suddenly you might find yourself like drinking shit tons of, I don't know, booze, getting into sedatives, like this weird sort of like instinctual search to get back to heroin. Well, this is the reverse of that, which is that we're born with this strange form of amnesia, and yet still inside of us is this desire to connect with God, to come home, as it's called. And so there's the compulsion to get high, to get money, to get power. These are all attempts to try to go home. And the frustrating thing is, every time you get to whatever the particular imaginary home that you thought was going to give you what you found, they call it chasing the dragon, is you realize this isn't doing anything for me. I've heard comedians, I never got to do it, but they talk about after the Tonight Show, you want to kill yourself. Like you finally, you've been doing stand-up so much, you have a great set on the Tonight Show. This is an antiquated idea. You're back at the hotel room. You just did it. You had your great set. But now what? Now what? What are you going to do now? You the thing you've been working on for so long, you got it. And now what? You're just in the hotel room, watching Forensic Files, looking at your phone, and you're just where you were before. And so this is that frustrating quality. Maybe that's the circuitry that drives addiction, which is why, I love people who've struggled with addiction because they're, saints, basically. Like if you run into any addict, it's like you're definitely hanging out with someone who is an intense devotee, almost practicing bhakti yoga.